Welcome to the Mama's Well podcast, where we are digging deep into the gifts and the gaps of foster and adoptive parenting. I'm Tara Hutton, and I'm glad you're here.
Mama's Well.
Yes, she is. Well, hello, and I am excited today to talk about something that is can be both amazingly wonderful and terrifying at the same time, and that is technology. And so we, as a kid growing up, there was a season, and my husband laughs at this, but my dad did not like TV. And so there was a season when our TV broke and we didn't get another one. And, back then we only had 3 channels anyway, but I thought it was so weird that we just weren't going to get a new TV. But Dad didn't like TV, and so we didn't have one. Didn't have computers, didn't have cell phones, none of that. And I'm dating myself, but it is what it is. So now we have so much technology, and it's just everywhere we look. Even our computers in our cars. So our kids have access to things that we didn't have access to. And if you're like me, you don't necessarily know how to navigate them like our kids do. So we need these things, especially now we're doing school virtually. And so we need access to technology, but we have to know how to use it and to help our kids learn to use it and to keep them safe. And so I've brought someone in today that has a lot to say about that, and she has a lot of experience. She's a licensed professional counselor. She has been working with kids, adults, teenagers who've experienced trauma, and really all of us, as we were just talking earlier, all of us have experienced some sort of trauma, but she's been doing this for a long time and has very passionate about this topic. And so I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Kate Turner.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add about your background or?
Okay, sure. I'd like to say I've been married for 34 years to JT, and we have 2 kids. Jess is 32. She's married to Ben, and James Austin is 27, and he's married to Mason. And Mason she's a school teacher in Bryan, and Jess is a teacher in Spring. Okay. And I was an elementary school counselor for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And a teacher before that. So been with kids a long time.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming. I think that anytime I can get an expert to come on the show and to share years and years of wisdom and experience, I just think we all win for that. And so thank you for that.
Yes.
You mentioned when we were talking about this podcast, I said, is there something that you'd really, would like to, really passionate about that you'd like to share? And you said technology. So I think that this is great to talk about technology. I'm going to just let you kick it off. Tell me what drove you to become so passionate about this?
Well, I think it started years ago when I became a school counselor in 2000, and technology was kind of coming on the scene then. TVs were big, and DVD players and all that, and movies. And as we moved into the later 2000s and we're in the 21st century, and the event of the smartphones, especially the Apple phone, and kids just getting really sucked in with tablets. And I saw what I started to see as a school counselor and then as a private practitioner was the loss of attention, the loss of just even being, I'm going to say this, being able to think. I would meet with a lot of teenagers, and I would ask a very simple question, and they would just look at me and say, I don't know. And then I would ask them if you did know. And sometimes that would work, sometimes that wouldn't. And they might say, I still don't know. Then invariably what I went to when I would do an intake with a teenager or preteen, one of my questions is, tell me a little bit about your technology use. How much would you say you're on a day? And average. And anywhere from 2 hours was minimal to almost 8 hours a day. And that's before COVID, going to school, and them looking at their screen time, whether it's, and I call technology, Tara, anything that has a screen.
Sure.
So it's a phone, it's a tablet, it's a television, it's a computer, it's anything. And what I'd like the audience to know is, oh man, I love technology. I
Yeah.
use it all the time.
Yeah.
So this talk that you and I are going to have, it's not about technology bad.
Yeah, they're going to watch
right?
it on technology.
Yeah, they are. Yes.
Great.
It's great. It makes
Yeah.
the world go round, and it's changing even faster than we have any idea every day, every minute. And we can use it for our good, or it can be used in a very destructive kind of way. So I saw increasingly in my private practice preteens and teens coming in what looked like states of addiction, and just kind of shutting down, not being able to emote, feeling very agitated when their phones or their devices were taken away. And then the connection between the parents or the people in the home was really shut down. There was very little of this and a lot of snarkiness oftentimes. So that's when I really decided that I wanted to look into this some more. And I am an independent facilitator for the Love and Logic company. And I was a speaker at their conference in Breckenridge in 2019. And that was my platform, was about the technology, kind of helping tame the technology monster. So it came out of just watching from the early years and it kind of blowing up and feeling like we're losing some of our children. I can't tell you how many parents have sat in front of me and just had their head down and say, I feel like I lost my daughter when I gave her her smartphone. I feel like I lost her.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, myself, we have this thing, I don't know, that goes back and forth with my husband and I in the evening. What are you looking at? Put that away.
Yeah.
What are you looking at? Put that away. Because it's so easy to get sucked in. I don't know if you saw that recent documentary, The Social Dilemma.
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah, so you realize, like, wow, if you didn't see that, you might want to tune in. It's on Netflix. But how we are being literally programmed, like being fed the information that we are looking at. And so that's happening universally, right? Everyone that's looking through the social media, we're being triggered in that way.
And back to your conversation that you have with your husband at night, it's because we were created to connect to each other, eyes to see each other, hands to hold each other, arms to hold each other, mouths to speak to each other, we were created for connection. And really what we're saying is, hey, what are you looking at? What we're saying is, look at me.
Right.
Look at me.
Right.
And not just in a, look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
We're created to have that intimacy.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Into me see, right?
Yeah.
That's what intimacy is. Look into my eyes. Let's chat. Let's put this down. Yeah.
That brings me, when you say we are created for connection, that is most of us, foster parents, adoptive parents, we were trained in TBRI, which is trust-based relational intervention. And the whole foundation of TBRI is you build it on connection.
Yeah.
And so let's just use that as a lead-in to children that we have in our care, and we are desperately seeking connection. And yet sometimes we are so overwhelmed that we are looking at our phone because we are trying to medicate that overwhelm.
Right.
And then we, in order just as a quick reprieve or respite, we're giving our children something to look at, right? And so we're both medicating, but not in the way that's going to build the connection that we desire.
Got it.
So let's talk about that. Like, what's happening in their brains? I know my daughters love to watch TV. They have certain shows, and we make time for that.
Right.
And sometimes it's because I need to get on a phone call or something, and they have been playing a long time by themselves, and I might just give that to them.
Right.
Or sometimes it's because we're all exhausted and we all curl up on the couch and watch Frozen for the umpteenth time,
Yes.
But that's probably different too when we're watching a show together versus just using it as a form of medication or so we're not saying that technology is bad or that watching movies or letting our children watch movie or whatever is bad. that is not what we're saying. I'm moving away in my older years from this bad, good thing.
Yes, definitely. So let me ask you this, though. Have you ever said, let's watch a movie? And my niece comes, and I love her. She's 16, and my daughter came over, and we're watching Elf, and they're both looking at their phones.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, hey, I thought this was movie night, and laugh at Will Ferrell time, and giggle at the stuff we've always giggled at. So would you guys be willing to put your phones down?
Right.
So that's,
And what they say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And they didn't get disgruntled.
Yeah.
They laughed.
Yeah.
Back to your question. Yes, this is not about demonizing technology. We're using technology right now. It's great. The world goes round with it.
Yeah.
It's about having things, Tara, in their proper place.
I agree.
Having things in their proper place. And sometimes mamas and daddies, we have to grace ourselves. One time I was having just a rough day, and I tend to be a little hard on myself. It's just my personality / Enneagram style person. And
Oh, don't get me started on
yeah,
Enneagram.
yes.
I like those
and,
Enneagrams.
and my daughter looked at me and she said, Mom, grace yourself.
Oh, that's
I love that. I
Yeah.
keep telling her, you need to write a blog,
Yeah.
a blog on that. Just
Yeah.
grace yourself. So parents, whether you're fostering or you have your bio kids in the home, we've got to be graceful with ourselves. And if it's just really hectic and you're making dinner and the cat's, got molasses on her and the dog is barking and the 2-year-old screaming, if you have to put on Frozen for the umpteenth time to just get a breath so you can get the mac and cheese and the hot dogs in the microwave, right? Then do that.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm talking about is if it becomes the go-to every single time there's either an upset or there's boredom. When my kids would say to me, Mom, I'm bored, I'd go, goody. Okay, what
Unload
do you
the
want?
dishwasher.
Yes. What should we do? What do you think you could do? So having technology in its proper place, and yes, when you and I were talking earlier, and there's something for me, if I've had a rough day and then I start looking through my Instagram, if I've gotten some nice comments or whatever, that feeling drops down. And it does for kids too. The problem is if we're soothing with that all the time, then the brain believes this is what I need to soothe.
Yeah.
Just like, and so I'm a kid of the 60s and 70s, and it was, get a cookie and some milk. So then, instead of, can we sit with our feelings? Can we talk about how we're feeling? No, go get something to eat. And where do we put technology in its proper place?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like that idea. So talk to us about what does happen in the brain. Like, a little
okay.
bit about what happens in the brain when we're, what's that doing?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about it. I
Okay.
don't have a whole lot on brain science. It's just when a kid is agitated, you give them an iPad or a phone and they immediately calm down, then the chemicals are dropping down, the dopamine that feels good. And then that's also an addictive quality that jangled emotions bad, drop down good, what's good, the pad, okay, good, I
Feel
feel
better.
good, yes.
Yeah.
That's very rudimentary
Yeah,
of what's happening in the brain. And as we become adults, if we have trauma that we have not gone to, that we have not delved into from our past, then oftentimes, our brains will say, 1 glass of wine good, 3 glasses of wine better,
Yeah,
right?
right.
2 pieces of pizza good, 4 better. Porn, technology, sleep. Our bodies are amazing in how we can learn to anesthetize ourselves.
Sure.
And being willing to say, oh my gosh, I'm feeling kind of off right now. What is this about? And being willing to being comfortably uncomfortable, if
Yeah.
you will, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same for kids. So if, say you've got a little, and maybe they've just been removed from a grandma or a parent, and they're really jangled. And maybe they came with an iPad.
Jangled.
Jangled
I
is
like
like,
jangled.
right?
Dysregulated?
Yeah, it's dysregulated. Jangled.
Okay, I like it.
Yes, and maybe they came with an iPad in their little,
Bag,
suitcase
yeah.
of stuff, and the caseworker says, this is their little blankie. You can't take it from them. So maybe beforehand, preemptively, you would talk with the caseworker and say, well, in this home, we have boundaries around technology. I understand that Susie's going to need this a little bit more.
Sure.
And yet what I want you to know, and I want to have this permission, is to start regulating the technology with her as she starts to assimilate into our family, right? And if Susie's 4 and emotionally she's probably 2, if she's been in a destructive, chaotic home, you let her have the iPad for a while, and yet then you're on the floor with Susie, you're doing this, how we were created, and moving the iPad over.
And what's that child really going to want if they had to choose?
Yes, they're going to want a pair of human eyes with a
right.
smile, right? With a smile. Even teenagers, y'all, don't get shocked, listening audience. Teenagers, a survey was just done, and it showed that 67 to 68% of teenagers that were surveyed, it was probably 3 of them, but anyway, said they would rather spend time with their family than be on their games or their technology. We were created for connection, right? So delving into that, if you feel in your family that technology is just on the cusp, maybe you have littles, you have 5, you have 8, you have 10. Something I always encourage parents is have a discussion with your spouse, with your partner, without children around, and say, what do we want this to look like? What do we want this family to look like? Hopefully you do that when they're really little or before they're born. And if not, say you just got a set of 3 from the foster care system, and they're in bed, and you sit down with your, you're in shock. What do we want this to look like? So having that game plan is super, super important.
Yeah, I like that. We've talked a lot about having a game plan in other podcasts, and just knowing ahead of time, when our boys, and I hate to say this, but a lot of my reasoning that we did this, I can't tell you my husband's reasoning, but I can tell you mine. But our boys didn't get cell phones until they were either driving or almost driving. And honestly, to be perfectly authentic, it was because I had a lot of fear about it.
Right.
So I can't say it was because, I had this great planning or whatever, but I'm really grateful because as a parent of a 5-year-old and a parent of a 23-year-old, there becomes a time where you have instilled and taught and protected as much as you can, but ultimately they walk outside your door and you can't hover, you can't helicopter, you can't do that. And so, for us, I'm really grateful that I did that because at some point you got to let it go, right?
Right.
And you have conversations and you talk about the areas that you've struggled and the ways that it's difficult for you. But with my younger children, I mean, obviously I don't know about obviously, because I think 7 and 8-year-olds do have cell phones these days.
They do.
But
yes.
My girls do not, don't even have like a anything. They have a Leap Pad that rarely has a charge. So if you want to play the Elite Pad, you got to find the charger somehow, and there's time limit on that. But anyway, point is, I do notice when they are allowed to do that, which is on a plane ride or a 18 hours to Breckenridge. There is what I would describe as a detox reaction that happens when we remove it. And so I saw that early on. I said, I can't, I don't want to deal with that.
Right.
So I just put them away.
Yes.
But what I think happened, because that happened, is they have had to learn other ways to not be bored, Yeah.
Right.
So
exactly, to use the imagination that they were given. And that's what I'm seeing too is, it's kind of stealing the imaginative power. So let's say, I'm older than you, and you and I were kids. If we got locked out of the house, we had to sit there and think, I'm locked out of the house. I'm going to go rattle some windows. I'm going to go knock on Miss Snodgrass's door to see if she's got a key. I'm going to, maybe, I don't know, I grew up in a little bitty town in upstate New York, so we knew everybody. I'm going to walk next door to the church. My dad was an Episcopal priest, and see if Dad's got a key or if he locked me out on purpose. I don't know. Now, if they get locked out, they don't have to think. Boom. They could maybe even unlock the door with their phone on their Nest device or whatever. And it has stolen a lot of, I think, gray matter for kids who are allowed free reign with it. And Google is a great thing. My son, James Austin, would say, Mom, Google is your friend. And he's right. And yet sometimes it can be just just like picking candy off a table. And what we want, Tara, is we want to raise thinking people. We want to
Yes.
raise thinking people who have causal thinking. If this, then that. If this, then that. What am I going to do? Who are problem solvers, because they're going to be our next brain surgeons, our next mechanics, our next dentists. I don't want them to be in the middle of my cranium with it wide open and going, Google, can you tell me where the amygdala is? I just don't.
Oh, Lord, please no.
Yeah, that's right. So that was something that with our kids now, Jesse's 32. She was born in 88. James Austin is 27. He was born in 93. So that was just the advent of all these things coming online. And I made some big mistakes where phones came in. Like James Austin they had theirs in their room at night. Big mistake. I didn't know, and hopefully when we know better, we do better.
Sure.
They didn't have the whole computer in your hand, the smartphones, and yet it still had internet and it had a little bitty screen.
Yeah.
And what I recommend to parents, one thing I recommend is, first of all, that kids don't get any kind of smartphone until at least 14. And they have different phones out there. If your kid has to come home alone, he can get a flip phone. He can there's a Gab phone, G-A-B, that looks like an iPhone, so they can still be cool, yet it doesn't hook up to the internet. It's calls and texts. You can send pictures if you pay extra for it. And why do we want to put the whole world in the palm of a kid's hand whose prefrontal cortex is still mush?
Have you ever been to NASA and seen that computer room where
years ago, and I don't recall.
But I remember looking at this ginormous room of computers.
Right.
And they basically said that our iPhones could do way more than this ginormous people that sent rocket ships up.
Yes, very much so. And I heard a speaker say once, if a man, a kind of a scroungy looking man knocked on your door and, kind of the quintessential scary guy, creeper with a trench coat, and he's dirty and he's yucky looking, and he goes, hey, could I go up in your daughter's room for a little while? And would you let him?
No.
Well, why are we letting strangers in through the phone into our daughter's rooms or into our son's rooms? Because it's not necessarily that our kids are looking for danger, trouble. Trouble is looking for them in any little way that they can get in. And so I say 14, ninth grade maybe, and then also once they get a smartphone, and some of my parents are like, they already have their smartphone, they're 12 years old, and they're going to scream about it. I go, I know. And you can put the cat back in the bag.
Yeah.
It's not fun if you've ever tried to stuff a cat in a bag.
Yeah.
It's not fun, and you can do this.
Yeah.
So one thing we talk about, too, is that one of the rules, and you talk about these things before, the preemptive discussions are so important, right? And deciding with your husband, with your spouse, if you're a single mom, deciding with yourself and maybe some of your friends or a single dad, hey, I need some help. I need some accountability here. And having these discussions with them and with your kids. So I brought this little book that's through the Love and Logic Company, and it's just a little book, and it's called Technology and Kids, Get the Conversation Started.
Oh.
It's about $6, and it's so worth the money, and it's about having conversations with your kids.
About technology.
Too, and it's asking those open-ended questions. I'll just flip to one. Here's one. What makes a phone really great? What features make it really cool? So the kids can talk about, this new phone, and it's got 3 cameras on it, and you can do slow-mo. And so they're not seeing you as the big bad, no phones. So one of the rules is phones go to bed before people. And people get up before phones. So even working with adults, I worked with one young woman, and I wake up in the morning and I just feel so anxious, and I'm looking at my phone and I'm looking at the news and the coronavirus and the elections. And I said, hey, let's say her name was Stacy. Hey, Stacy, let's try this. When you get up in the morning, don't pick up your phone. Just get up, stretch, sing a
Have
little
a morning
song if you want
ritual.
to.
Yeah,
You want to be
whatever
like a
you-
Disney princess
Sure.
or something. Just skip to the.
Let it
Yeah,
go.
that's right.
Let it
go.
go.
Right. Skip to the kitchen, get a cup of coffee, look out the window, and just let your phone rest. If somebody really needs you, they will hit you up several times.
Yeah.
And just do that for a week and come back and see me. Tell me how it went. And so she came back and she goes, "Oh my gosh. My
Totally
days
different.
went so much better."
Good for her,
So
yeah.
back to teens and preteens, if they already have a phone and you're not willing to put the cat back in the bag, you do your family.
Yeah.
Then one thing I always recommend is that phones get turned in at night to parents, and that phones charge in the parents' room. And one parent said, "Oh, we charge it in the kitchen." I said, "Well, go out and check the history in the morning." Well, the kid had been up till 2:00 in the morning
Wow. Yeah.
at the kitchen counter,
Yeah. Good point.
snapping and chatting. And a lot of teenagers have not liked that. And yet the parents have told me, "Oh my gosh, our evenings are so much calmer." And I said, just teenagers need sleep. They need the most sleep at this time in their lives. Their brains are shedding and they're growing, and their prefrontal cortexes are finally coming online, and they've got to rest. And every time there's a ding, they wake
Yeah.
up out of that sleep. Or some kids sleep with their phone in their hand, and then it'll buzz and it'll wake them up.
Wow.
So teenagers are already a little prickly, but a teenager without sleep, extra prickly.
Yeah.
Right?
I love
Yeah.
you had another one that I like, snarky.
Snarky.
So that's
yeah.
a word that my mom used to say that word, snarky,
Yeah.
jangled, and prickly. I like it.
Okay. I'll bring the vocab. I'll bring the
That's
vocab.
good. I like those.
So phones go to bed before people.
Okay, yeah.
And people get up before phones.
That's good.
That is from Andy Crouch, TechWise Family. And if you go to my website, it's katedturner.com
Okay.
or kateturnercounseling.org. I have a list of resources
Good.
on one of my pages. I think it says workshop resources. And I
Okay.
have a lot of books. Screens and Teens is a good one by Kathy Koch.
Okay.
Andy Crouch, the TechWise Family. iGen, which does a lot of the brain research. So parents, if you're interested in what technology and overuse does to the brain, that book, iGen, I cannot remember the author. It's on my website, or
Yeah.
you can Google it. It's great when it talks about brain research.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. I think that it's easy to do.
Yeah.
Especially, sometimes we feel bad for the kids
Right.
that come into our homes. I think we have to, before we insert these types of things, we have to be confident about
Yes.
what we're doing.
Right.
And to know that we're not trying to restrict, we're trying to protect. And here's our job as foster and adoptive parents, as parents in general. We are here to protect our children,
Right.
And so, being aware that they need protection is the first step, and then getting the confidence to stay your ground,
Right.
and to know that you're not doing it to be rigid or harsh
Or mean.
Yeah, no,
You're so mean.
You're doing it
Yeah.
to love them.
Right. And so that brings up a really great point, Tara, that one of the first rules of love and logic is that the parents have to take good care of themselves, body, soul, and spirit. And also, and part of that is to know moms and dads, aunts and uncles, grandparents who are raising kids, that you are modeling all the time. Those little beady eyes are watching you, right? I always laugh and say they're gathering intel, right? They're watching all the time. So we've got to look and see, not do as I say, not do as I say, do as I do what? No, yeah.
Don't do as I say. Don't do as I do. Do as I say.
Right, but we want it to be do as I do and
yeah,
say,
yeah,
right? So
right.
they're watching all the time to see if there's any cracks in our,
Yeah.
veneer, and
Yeah.
then they're going to pull it out real quickly and go,
Yeah.
well, you're on Facebook 45 minutes last
Yeah.
night, and I was trying to talk to you
Yeah.
about John at
Yeah.
school who likes me.
Right.
So we are modeling all the time. I had a set of parents in there who they were really worried about their 13-year-old daughter, and she was on her phone all the time. They tried to take it away. They didn't know what to do, so they came into me without her. And so I said, okay, step one, what we're going to do here first is I want you guys to just take 2 weeks and model your own phone habits. And they said, ooh, ow, yikes. And it was good. I wasn't,
Sure.
it was friendly. And I said, because she's watching you. So let's come up with a code word or phrase anytime you see that your spouse's head is down. And they're like, yeah, because all we see is our daughter's scalp. I go, I got it. So anytime you see that your spouse is on their phone and you believe it's not work related, then let's come up with some kind of phrase that your daughter won't be privy to. And they thought and they thought and they go, okay, we're just going to say LU. And that was look up. Look up. Okay, no, it was great because the teenage daughter's like, y'all are so gross because she thought they were going, love you,
Oh,
love you,
that's
like,
hilarious,
yeah,
yeah.
LU, even though it'd be LY.
Yeah.
So,
But you would have been appropriate,
And they kind of kept a little tally and they came back to me and they said, oh my gosh. We were not setting a great example for Samantha. And when we realized how much we were saying LU, which got to be kind of funny. So parents, by taking really good care of yourselves, there's some introspection there too. How much am I camped in front of my phone?
Right.
And where's the time and place? Because I will tell you that these children grow up quickly. We don't feel that way when we're in the middle of the mess.
No,
and they're
we
screaming
don't.
and the cat's
They
on fire.
do, as
and
one
yeah.
of mine's getting married in a couple
Yes.
of weeks. Yes, they do. I'm sitting here thinking about what you're saying, and I think that's super important to let your kids know that you struggle too in that area. And yesterday, actually a couple of days ago, I was noticing that I was looking at my phone a lot, like in the car driving. And I was like, oh, and I'm very aware of this because if my husband looks at his phone while he's driving, I'm like, get off your phone, And then also when you start to have kids who are driving, like you're very, very aware of preach about not looking at your phone while you're driving, not looking at your phone while you're driving. So I've been through this 3 times now and I'm mindful of it. So I told my daughter, I said, girls, I'm having a hard time looking at my phone when I'm driving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you the phone, Trinity, and I want you to choose the music now. From now on, we're in the car. Because that is so she loves to be in control of the music. And she loves music.
DJ.
And so, yeah. And so it's been good for me because now I've outed myself. A, I said, oh, I'm having trouble with this. And then B, I brought her into my accountability. And so,
I love that.
yeah, I kind of liked it too.
And
I don't know where that came from.
that parents aren't perfect. And, I've said, when I have these technology talks, I'm like, I don't trust myself with the phone.
I don't.
I look up and I look LU, I look up and oh my gosh, I've been on Pinterest for 45 minutes and I can never get that time back. So how dare I preach to someone if I'm not willing to keep my side of the street clean?
Yes.
And a lot of that is just so parents take really good care of yourselves and consider your modeling, consider that and be graceful to yourselves. And then the next piece would be have a conversation with your kids. Use a book from Love and Logic or talk to them about, do some of your friends have cell phones? Because I have worked with people whose, second graders, first graders have full on iPhones.
Yeah.
And talk with your littles, your middles, your olders, and what do you see? Do you see problems with it? Let's have a conversation because those open conversations are huge, as well as having the preemptive conversations with the other adults in your life.
Yeah. Right.
Huge, just talking about it. And we're not demonizing it. It's proper place. Andy Crouch talks about that a lot in that book, and I love that. Because in our world, there's so many wonderful things that when we turn them upside down, they're not so wonderful.
No, right.
Like, food is great. We have too much, it's not so great. A glass of wine can be nice. We have too much, it's not so great. Technology. Right. So, we're the ones who kind of turn things on their ear and make, abuse them.
Right.
So go ahead.
And we're all, that's good. We're on an equal playing field.
Right,
Because
right.
We're doing it too, and I could feel myself, why am I doing that?
Yes.
And so I felt like I needed some accountability, and they're the only ones in the car with me. So, hey, it's working. So it's been a couple of days and I'm like, well, that seems to be good because she she loves doing that. So
I might suggest that you go back around to her if you guys are having a family dinner and say, Trinity, and I don't know your other daughter's name. Skyla. What did y'all think about when Mom said I'm
Yeah,
having
that's
a
a
hard
good
time
idea.
with my phone?
yeah.
And they go, well, we saw it. You know?
Yeah,
Because-
maybe so.
Because they're always watching.
Because I'm thinking to myself, in 9 more years,
Oh,
she's going to be driving. So what do I want her to know? I want her to know that it is very important that we don't look at our phones when we're driving.
right.
And
Yes.
so important.
Right.
And so I need to spend the next 9 years
Modeling.
modeling that.
Right. And if, there's the great billboards, it can wait. And I think about that. That is just on point. It can wait. There is just no 911.
Yeah.
The texts I get are, what's for dinner, or
Yeah.
could you come over, or right? Did you see what's
Yeah.
on sale at Marshall's Home
Yeah.
Goods? Right.
Yeah.
It can wait.
Yeah, it
Because
can.
there's another book it's great. I think it's 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You. Great book. I think I have that on my website too. And he talks about the distance you travel when you just put your head down once to look up, to look at a text. It's crazy. It's like a football field when you're in your car going X
Wow.
amount of miles. And when I saw that, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
great.
I'll see
Yeah.
if that's on my website. It just some really great references out there.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to add? Because if not, I want to make sure we go back over each one of these main points,
Okay.
so that people have this simple takeaway. Because
All right.
I don't know. There's probably some scientific research that says how much information people are going to take away.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it's a very small amount. But what is there? What else? Is there anything else you want to add?
The last thing, I think, when you and I were talking, or maybe I'd sent you an email, were boundaries.
Okay.
And we've talked about this. This has been woven in our conversation already. And boundaries are just those things that you set to protect your castle, right? Protect your castle, and that's protect your kids who are vulnerable to, people who mean them harm. And what are the boundaries? That's going back to having that conversation before you introduce technology, or if you think it's getting out of hand. And so being aware. So the boundaries about what time do the kids turn the phones in at night? Are we going to have a net nanny on there? Are we going to have a system? Are we going to have Life 360 on their phones? What are the boundaries about telephones in bedrooms? Some parents do not allow phones in bedrooms, even with their older teens. They don't allow screens in bedrooms. You have to decide for your family what are the boundaries, and then you're going to have these loving conversations, and not just no phones in the bedrooms, no screens in the bedrooms, right? Not the drill sergeant. You want to come off more like a consultant. Let's talk about this. Ultimately, the parents have the final say.
Right.
And yet involving the children in these conversations is so powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
involving the kids in the conversation.
Yes, so powerful.
So you know what your non-negotiables are,
Exactly.
but you're allowing them to bring in their ideas, and you validate those ideas, and then your non-negotiables are
Right.
staying,
Yeah.
but you're still allowing them. That's
Right.
good.
And I hear adults sometimes tell me, well, my 12-year-old is smarter than me. And I'll say, no, Susan, she's not. It may feel that way. You're 40. She is not smarter than you. She knows you. She knows how to manipulate.
Yeah.
And also, us, especially mamas, they know where our tender spots are. And we love to see them happy because we love our kids. And just be careful in asking yourself, is this one of those times I'm being manipulated?
Yeah.
Right? Is this one of those times? So,
Yeah, and yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not always. They aren't necessarily. I had this conversation with my son today because he didn't do something that I had asked him to do, and so I took it as he was manipulating, but what he said was, I just got distracted and
Yeah.
didn't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that's common. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And just like saying, hey, let's just have our mutual friend who's also my therapist, Vicky. A word that she always she offers me to use and to choose, and I have. I'd like to learn to choose it more, but it's to be curious.
Yeah.
And to just to come into a situation with our kids from a place of curiosity.
Yeah.
Instead of and I think that's a great in any kind of conversations with our kids is like, well, tell me what it is that you need from that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Tell me what it is, and let's come up with a solution so that you get what you need.
Right.
And I feel like I'm protecting you.
Right, and it fits the family narrative. It
Yeah.
fits the family boundaries. And one of my favorite questions is, help me understand.
Help me
and not in a snarky, like, help me understand,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
in
No.
a very sincere, help me understand. Another one is, and asking permission is huge. Even with kids, you're asking permission to enter into their world.
Mm-hmm.
Will you help me understand? Or would you be willing to share with me?
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, because human beings have a great need for control. Little, middle, big, all of us, a
Yeah.
great need for control. So when you open that lovingly, help me understand, Skyla, what this means to you, instead of saying, you can absolutely not have a blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
You know, help me
Yeah,
understand
that's
what this
good.
means to you.
Yeah.
So going back over kind of the bullet
Yeah, let's
points
do that.
was the first one, and I love to use acronyms. I like to rhyme things because it helps, and is care for parents. So care, parents, take good care of yourselves, especially if you have foster kids in there who've just come from a traumatic situations. It's super important you take really good care of yourselves. Or like JT and me, our first daughter was born with multiple birth defects. We didn't know. We had
Yeah.
grainy ultrasounds. Nobody knew. And then
Yeah.
she's born, and she was missing toes and had all these specialties and had surgeries. And I had the mom guilt. What did I do wrong?
Right.
And I'm going back, trying to go back every morsel of food I put in my mouth that could have
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah.
And as parents, we can often, you know, ride the guilt train. Kids are often good at about knowing that.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, we want our kids to be happy. So I had to learn to take really good care of myself and be compassionate to myself. I had a daughter with specific needs. If you've got foster kids or adopted kids from they've got specific needs. I don't care if you got that kid right out of the hospital. That's still trauma, because
Right.
that's separation from the birth mom, right?
Absolutely.
So taking really good care. So see, the first one is care,
Okay.
parents. And, you know, taking care of, also watching, you know, your habits. And the next is share. So care, share. You're going to share with your kids. You're going to have these conversations. Remember, we're built for this. We're built for that. And just the eyes that see, and the mouth that smiles in recognition, the hands to hold. So you're going to share. You're going to maybe pick up some of those little books and say, hey, let's talk about technology. I know you've really wanted a phone for Christmas, and you're 5, you're not getting it. But anyway. And so let's talk about this. I'd like to understand, you know, and if they go, well, it's really cool, and all the kids have one, then don't be that parent that says, well, if all the kids, you know, owned a rattlesnake, would you want one too?
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that, right? You're listening. Tell me more. Help me understand. Well, it's just, you know, and then they can call anybody, and I can get a hold of you if I want to. Okay, let's talk more about that. And even if the back of your mind, you know, there ain't no way this 12-year-old's getting a phone
Yeah.
right now, listen to them.
Yeah.
So share, care, share, and the third one is be aware. And be aware.
very good.
Care, share, be aware.
So
Be
rhyme.
aware. Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, that's it. It's just
Yeah.
rhyme. So
Yeah.
care, share, be
Be
aware.
aware.
And as far as being aware, you have places on your website that are going to tell lots of books. It sounds like,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
also some. Well, I don't know what you would call it, but technology essentially that helps protect your kids.
Right.
And we can find that on your website.
Yes, yes. I call them net nannies. I know
Okay.
it's software that you download, and there's Life 360, there's Bark, and I'm just going to tell parents the ones that you pay for are actually better. That is a monthly subscription.
Yeah.
They're typically not crazy,
Yeah.
$9-10 a month, and I also want to say, be aware, and I'm going to just maybe wrap up with this, is I cannot tell you how many kids in my office are already addicted to pornography, Tara, and not just boys. And I will flat out ask them, you know, I won't say, so do you look at porn? I'll say, so talk to me about the first time you saw porn,
Yeah.
right? I think I was 8. And when I say it that way, and I'm leaning forward and I'm looking in their eyes, I don't have judgment. I think I was 12. Okay, yeah, wow. What was that like? Well, you know, Kate, it was kind of like a car wreck. I didn't want to look at it, but I didn't want to look away. And then I'll say, and how often do you look at it now?
Yeah.
And when they tell me twice a week, then I know it's 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And so I want parents to be aware. That's when I talked about earlier about the creepy man showing up, and not that just he represents pornography. It can be
Sure.
anything.
Right.
So understanding when our kids have these Kindles, these iPads, anything that's hooked up to the internet with no limits on them, they will see things you wish they would never have seen.
And you can't unsee
You can't unsee that.
what you already saw.
You can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Right. And pornography is extremely addicting because of the chemicals that drop down. And that's a whole nother talk for another
Yeah.
day. And yet,
Yeah.
I just say that pleading to parents.
Yeah.
Because we love you, parents, and
Yeah.
we love
Say
your
it right there in
kids.
that
We
camera.
love you, parents. We love your kids. And to protect them in the kindest and warmest of ways without being a drill sergeant. And you can do it. There are tools and there are people that will help you. You got this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good, Kate.
Yeah.
And I think this is very empowering. And I think that as parents, I think that we really need to remember our motive.
Yeah.
And our motive is to protect and to love our
Right.
kids. And sometimes the world confuses us, gets us all confused about that, And so we got to ask ourselves, well, what do I wish that my parents would have done for me?
Right.
Do I wish that my parents would have asked me more questions? Yes.
Yes.
Do I wish my parents would have, that's it. I wish they would have asked me more questions.
Right, without being afraid of getting
The
in
answer.
trouble.
Yeah,
And
or them being afraid of the answer,
right,
too.
or us being afraid of getting in trouble.
Right.
And then one little tidbit I'll leave with your viewers that can serve you well. And it's if they want to argue with you about technology or why can't I, or, this is ridiculous, it's 13 and it's 2020 or 2021, and you're just so old-fashioned and you're just full of fear, and they know your buttons, right? Then you just look at them and you say, I love you too much to argue about this. What did I say? And you're smiling.
Yeah.
See the smile? It's not Jack Nicholson in The Shining, right? It's just a smile. And say it with me, parents. I love you too much to argue about this. What did I say? And I'm from the 70s. I still have a turntable. I have my old jam. I love Motown. I'm a Motown girl.
Yeah.
Got the Supremes, and it's the broken record. But you don't, I love you too much to argue about this, sweetie.
Yeah.
What did I say? Over and over until finally, and I'll tell you this happened with one of my friends, and her daughter's 16 and was bugging her about this, and every day they would fight, and I'd say, Terry, just tell her, I love you too much to argue about this, Kelly. What did I say? She said, is that it? And I said, that's it. That's all I want you to say. And she keeps coming back with more. Don't lose your temper.
Yeah.
Because she go, well, I'm Cajun. I lose my temper.
Yeah.
I go, no, you're just losing your temper.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're Cajun or Italian or whatever. And so she did. And she came back. I was at school and she was a librarian. She comes to my office. She goes, Kate, it worked. And then I go, tell me what happened. I just kept saying it. And finally, Kelly looked at me and she said, Mom, are you drunk? And I go, yes.
Yeah, it worked.
Yes, it worked. And so that's just a little tidbit
Yeah.
for parents. I love you too much to argue. Because we do. We don't want to argue with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny. My husband has one. I'm tattling on him. He says, well, I'm sorry their parents don't love them that much. I'm sorry
Yeah.
your parents don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love
that's
that.
probably not trauma informed.
Yeah.
Take that back. Anyway.
Well, with a wink and a smile.
Yeah,
It's
with
good.
a wink
Yeah.
and he does,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that has to come from a place deep within us. A book I read, The Circle of Security, they say that parents, and this is posted at my house, I am bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind.
Yes.
I am bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. Isn't
Yeah.
that empowering?
Yes. Yeah, it's like I got
To
you.
say that all the time,
Yeah.
that I'm bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind.
Yes.
And so I think if we can just remember that would give us such confidence to parent from a place of wisdom, the wisdom we do have, and that we need to draw on. And so this was a great time.
It
It's our
was.
first time to ever meet.
Yes.
How fun is
Yeah.
that? So thank you for
You're
being
welcome.
here. Thank you to my friend Vicky, my therapist Vicky, my
Thank you,
wonderful,
Vicky.
wonderful person to introduce us. And for all of you listening, I hope that you can take away something from this. I hope that you can remember that you are bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind when it comes to technology, and that you are making decisions from a place of wisdom and protection, and that you can do that in a way that is honoring of yourself and honoring of your child. And like you said, Kate, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
You can do this. So share this with your friends. This is an important message to get out to other parents, not just foster and adoptive parents. This is for all parents. So share it on your social medias. Just don't scroll too long. I had a friend who told me, you know what? Be mindful when you're scrolling. Set a timer. Scroll for 10 minutes, and then when the timer goes off, turn it off. So just make sure you get to the Mom as Well podcast when you're using your phone and your whatever time you have, you want to listen to this. So thanks. Share this, and don't forget to like and subscribe and download your Wisdom from the Well card. You'll have to download to see what it is, but we had a lot of wisdom from today's message. So thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Mama's well.
Yes, she is.